Hello and welcome back to Are You Here for the Cricket, brought to you by Dafa News. I am Jamie, as always, and I'm joined by a very special guest. It's been over 2.5 years since Nick Knight, former England batsman turned analyst, was on the show. We're here talking about England, defending England's chances at the World Cup. Nick, how are you?
Do you know what? I'm really good, thank you. And I'm looking forward to chatting to you, Jamie, because I think, as you said, the last time was back in January 21. We had a lovely time there. England then went and played the Test match series. We were building up for that. Australia playing at India at the Gabba. We had lots to talk about. We have lots to talk about again.
Absolutely. Sounds a bit surreal. England defending World Cup champions. What emotions does that stoke in you, Nick?
Well, do you know what, Jamie? We've just finished a domestic summer here, international summer, literally a couple of days ago. We had a series against Ireland. It was a sort of, it wasn't the full World Cup squad. In fact, none of the World Cup squad played it. They left last night. However, I did get to interview Matthew Mott, who's the coach. And I was actually said that to him. I said, what does it feel like? Obviously, he wasn't the coach then, but you guys are the defending champs. What sort of pressures will that build on you? Jos Buttler, Ben Stokes, iconic players. How will they cope with that? And he's very phlegmatic. He just said, "Look, we'll go out there and do the best we can. We know we've got a side that can compete well." But you're right; it is really exciting times. We've had Owen Morgan working with us back on the broadcast back here. And of course, he was the captain of that side back in 2019. So there's me as a presenter, a bit like you asking these questions to Owen Morgan, and you can feel the excitement. I think that's the most important. You can really feel genuine excitement, genuine self-belief that these guys can go and do it again. A good number of players who played in that 2019 World Cup will be out there competing this time around. So there will be genuine self-belief that they can do it again.
Absolutely, very vital name you just took, Owen Morgan. I also want to ask you, because since they won the World Cup, they're also reigning T20 World Cup champions. Now, granted, 2.5 years since they won that World Cup, but going on to win that as well, that's got to add to their overall belief.
It has, and that's probably where the guy I just mentioned earlier comes in, because Matthew Mott obviously was kind of involved in that process a little bit. So when you're sort of putting what happened back in 2019 and then you're sort of transferring it to now, obviously that process did involve Matthew, and so that will give him a huge amount of confidence that that they can go and lift the trophy again. I think when you look at the dynamic, which I believe is really important, when you look at dynamics between captain and coaches, I think that dynamic with Jos Buttler and Matthew Mott is really crucial. I think centre stage is Jos. Jos Buttler plays the sort of leading role, if you like, and Matthew Mott very happy to sit back, watch, observe, pick out points, be happy to be the guy sort of sitting behind a little bit and letting Jos get on with it. There's obviously Ben Stokes in there as well. So I think the dynamic is really crucial. I do genuinely believe that dynamic is crucial anyway for every team, but I think England have got a good dynamic there.
Yeah. We'll come to Ben Stokes because that's a massive player, obviously. What do you make of England's World Cup squad? All boxes ticked, maybe something missing?
I would say all boxes ticked. I mean, inevitably, what we're all doing now is that we're looking at strengths and weaknesses of sides going into the World Cup, conditions as well. I would say boxes, certainly as far as the personnel of the squad are concerned, definitely boxes ticked. I think it's quite a difficult squad to pick for all the teams, because I personally, and this is just my personal view, when you look back at the last World Cup in 2019, obviously in England, you're looking at conditions where it might be slightly different in Birmingham to Manchester to the Oval to Lords, whatever. But essentially, Jamie, what we've got is very similar conditions. Where I see it, and I may be very wrong here, but where I see it looking forward into the next 6 weeks is conditions okay, subcontinent, okay, India. They could be they're very geographically different, and the conditions themselves could represent very different challenges for the team. So what I look at is not so much what will be the best team, but what is the best squad that can perhaps just use those conditions best. How are you going? Have you got 5 or 6 genuine quick bowlers or seam bowlers or swing bowlers? Have you got that covered? Well, England will say they have. Have you got your spin options if you need it? Yeah, England can go with 4 spinners in any given side. They can go with 4 spin options because they'll play Livingston, Root plus the 2 spinners. Is your batting powerful enough at the top? Absolutely. So I like the way that they've gone with 3 left armers because I think they're going to use those in the group stages certainly, and beyond if they progress. I like the fact they've got a couple of pace bowlers, genuine Mark Wood, Gus Atkinson, Jofra Archer is travelling reserve. So there's always that sort of mouth-watering thought that he might still come into things later on in the tournament where he will be fresh and ready to go. So I think they've got all boxes ticked. The question mark I've got is how are they going to adjust and react and work out given situations on given days? I think that will be the challenge for England. I think that will be actually the challenge for a lot of the sides. And that's where I go back to the squad. Have you got the squad to cover those different challenges, those different conditions that you might be faced with?
Yeah. I think they do because, as you mentioned, just the names that you've taken, right? Majority of them have experience playing around the world, especially in India, and a lot of them were part of the IPL this year. So I think, yes, you're right. There are varied conditions, but you just go down what could possibly be their starting 11 for that first match against New Zealand. Like you said, it does tick every single box. I want to ask you about the spin quotient. Adil Rashid, I mean, white ball titan, no question marks there. But you have someone like Moeen, a lot of experience, plays all these leagues. And Liam Livingston, he's not a bowler. He might not bowl you 10 overs, but he's someone who can break partnerships. If you assume that of England's 9 league matches, perhaps 3 to 4 could be on somewhat slow and low wickets at the most, because all said and done, we're still in early October when the World Cup starts. Maybe second half November tracks might change. Dew might come into factor. But I'm just looking at England's first 7 matches. If Livingston, Moeen Ali, and Adil Rashid are your 3 spinners, these are 3 varied spinners who can perhaps give every single batting lineup some kind of headache, right?
Absolutely, Jamie. And then don't forget Joe Root. Joe Root will bowl. There's no question Joe Root will add. He's not going to bowl 10 overs very often, if at all. Yeah. But he will bowl you maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4. That's my point, really. And that's the point you're making. When you're looking at ticking boxes and you're looking at squads and you're looking at being able to balance your side. In an ideal world, Jamie, you want Ben Stokes to be bowling. Then you've got 8 bowlers. In their front line 11, you've probably got 8 bowling options. Now, the reality is we don't really know what he's got in terms of his ability to bowl regularly. I think we all probably suspect that he's not going to bowl much, if at all. So then you're still looking at 7 bowling options, which is, should be plenty. Right, you've got Livingston, you've got Root, who will probably maybe combine to bowl one allocation. Who knows? Moeen Ali and Adil Rashid. I'm glad you brought up Adil Rashid because I think when you look at this England side, you look back at winning the World Cup in 2019. You look at the top order blasting those early runs, muscular, belligerent players whacking 4s and 6s. England setting big totals. England going past 400. England going to late 300s, then defending. The key player for me in that is Adil Rashid. Often, maybe not often, maybe that's the wrong word, but sometimes I see his name getting overlooked too much in the importance of what England achieved in the last cycle and winning that World Cup. When you look at the difference between T20 cricket and 50-over cricket, you are looking essentially, in the bowling perspective, who have you got that can break that stubborn partnership? When Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli are flying and they're going at 150 partnership and the wicket is flat and things are not going your way, who can you turn to as a captain and say, right, break me this partnership? Adil Rashid and a little bit of pace from, say, Mark Wood. You need that bowler with a point of difference. And Adil Rashid has often been that bowler. Now, he comes into this World Cup with a little bit of a niggle. I think he's absolutely fine now. He didn't play that much. They've just been looking after him, resting him. I think he's going to be absolutely fine. I hope so from an England perspective because he does play an absolutely crucial role. He's a wicket taker, and then you combine it with the Moeen Ali factor. Now, Moeen doesn't always pick up wickets. He doesn't, but what he does do is they are great mates and they work together in partnership. And sometimes the work that Moeen does complements the work that Adil Rashid does. And it's often Adil Rashid that picks up the wicket. And you look up at the end of the figures, and Moeen's got 1 for, 0 for, and Adil's got 4 for. But don't underestimate the importance of Moeen contributing to Adil Rashid in that partnership in the middle.
Yeah, that sort of seems to be the story of Moeen Ali's career in all formats. Does enough, but just doesn't always make the headlines. Very quickly, Joe Root, far from ideal batting form going into a World Cup. Do you think England are worried about him, or he's one of those players just based on being Joe Root? He plays every single match.
England are not worried about Joe Root. England don't worry about Joe Root. Joe Root doesn't really worry about Joe Root. Joe Root wanted to play in that one game at Headingley against Ireland because he wanted to find some form and rhythm. But the fact that it got washed out, is it a concern for England? No, not at all. I mean, he spent the whole IPL just assessing conditions, working with players, tapping into knowledge of Kumar Sangakkara, Jos Buttler, whoever it was, talking to players, getting used to conditions. He knows conditions inside out there anyway, but he is the ultimate professional. He is the ultimate understander of what he needs to do and what the team needs to do. And I'm glad you mentioned him. I've got lots of notes here, like we all have, strengths and weaknesses, what needs to go well. Top of my list is Joe Root at number 3. A, because he can bowl spin, but B, because I talk about assessing conditions and that being the key. That there is no better player in the England side to do that than Joe Root. And so his role will be crucial, not just to score runs, but also to feed back information. What's the wicket like? What do we need to get to? Who are going to be the danger bowlers? Where are the weaknesses and strengths of the side? All of that will be collated in the brain of Joe Root. And so for me, he is the crucial player with bat in hand. Sure, Johnny Bairstow, best opening ODI player we've ever had. Ben Stokes, game changer, one of the very best of all time. I get that. Jos Buttler, the names just go on and on. But when you're looking at identifying key moments in games, there's not too many better than Joe Root.
And he also seems, to my mind, the names you take, these are all big hitters. They can get you 400 on the board. But Joe Root still remains that, that prototype of what is required in these conditions to bat out and let all the big names around him go berserk. So now,
absolutely.
Honest reaction. Ben Stokes coming back. Were you surprised, or something that was perhaps always on the cards?
I think we always felt that it was on the cards. I think having had a break from one-day international, got his mind focused on Test match cricket, all that he'd achieved in Test match cricket, being the experience that he had in the 2019 World Cup, being a World Cup champion, great mates with the team members, great mates with the captain. None of us know exactly how that conversation went with Jos Buttler and Ben Stokes, but my gut feel is it didn't take a lot of persuading. And he's just a big match player. He's a big tournament player. I think it's so crucial, because when you look, I always look at it from other sides looking into an England side. And if Ben Stokes is not there and sat at home watching, you kind of feel, it takes a massive part of the aura that this England side has when it lands, as it did probably this morning. I think they left last night here from the UK. If Ben Stokes walks off that plane and he's part of that 50, oh my, I mean, what it gives to the side, but also what it portrays to the rest of the teams playing. And I think there is that aura that he brings. There is that, obviously, that captaincy ability that he'll help with Jos Buttler, and that game changer. I mean, he's almost superhuman. Some of the stuff that Ben Stokes can do, you would feel, I can only imagine, as an opponent, opposition side playing against England, that even if the task is almost unachievable, if he's at the crease, it is very achievable. And that is what the threat factor that he will bring. He's the kind of final piece in the jigsaw for me. Absolutely integral and absolutely crucial that he's there.
That is probably the perfect way to sum it up. And the use of the word aura, because you look at, to my mind, and I was having this discussion with someone a couple of days ago, Ben Stokes has done in 3 innings what many players go a lifetime without doing. You have Headingley 2019, which came a month after Lord's 2019. And then I look at what he did last year at the T20 World Cup. Didn't really do much, but come the biggest match of the tournament, who's 51 not out? Ben Stokes, and I like the way you describe the effect that it has on other players, because he might not do much. Like you said, he probably won't bowl. He might get you 30, 40 runs now and then, but in the biggest match, how big is it to have a player like that to be able to call on? Because I mean, there's no bigger match player to my mind going around right now.
Yeah, well, I go back to my own career. The sort of latter end of my career, we had Andrew Flintoff, very
Yeah.
similar type of character. Now, you look at the numbers at the end of the career, and you think, well, okay, they're very good. But actually, what you really feel as a player who was lucky enough to be in that environment, in that dressing room, is that you felt that no game was ever dead, no game was ever finished. Now, Freddie, obviously, at that point was also charging in and bowling brilliantly and changing games at the end, brilliant death bowler, Yorkers, etc. But even with the bat in hand, if you felt the game had sort of gone away from you, was drifting away, if he was still there, you felt there was a chance. And I think it's that with Ben Stokes. I imagine the players that are lucky enough to be in that dressing room with Ben Stokes would have a very similar feeling to the ones that I had, where it might be that you're going at 10, 15 and over for 4 or 5 over. Can we do it? Yeah, we can. Absolutely, we can. And that, what that generates for those around the dressing room, gives them that self-belief. Gives them that, generates that energy in them that they still can win this game. And I think when you've got a player, and there are very few that have ever played the game, but when you've got a player like that, I mean, you can't really put into words. I use aura, and you can't really put into too many words what that effect has, on your own team and of course on the opposition team.
Absolutely. I mean, once in a generation cricketer is a bit of an understatement. Jason Roy for the vault of runs for the experience. That's a blow. David Malan, someone who's got runs across the globe, a very good average. Do you see him as a natural fit across all 9 matches, or maybe he's challenged by someone younger? Because he hasn't had a lot of success in India, all said and done.
Yeah, you're talking about David Milan. I mean, he
Yeah.
comes into the. I mean, he played beautifully. I call him a touch player. He likes pace on the ball. You think of some of his best Test match innings. I mean, he's got 100 in Perth. He loves the ball coming on. But I think his game has developed a lot in the last year or 2 years. I think he's going to be a huge success. I think it sort of snuck up a little bit off the rails because I don't know whether it was always the intention for him to open the batting. I think it was very much an intention that he would play a role in the side and would be in the squad. But I think, with the injuries to Jason, I mean, it's a really unfortunate situation for Jason. And I have actually a great deal of sympathy with him on it, because ultimately, I think England made the right decision, by the way. I think Harry Brook is a fantastic player, and I think that he had to be in that side. And it's unfortunate for Jason Roy that he misses out. However, the one thing I would say is, I mean, he got 200s, 200s in his last 6 games. So therefore, you're looking at a situation where he's going to say, "Hang on a minute, I'm in pretty good form." The problem for him is the back injury. The problem for him is it was a good few months ago where he scored those 200s in those 6 games. So, form has not necessarily been on his side in recent times. Yeah. I understand the decision. It was slightly awkward in the way that it was done in many ways, because it was originally picked in the squad, and England then said that's going to be our squad, and then the change was made. So I do feel with him, because it happened to me in '99 a little bit. I played in the World Cup. I was in the squad, but I missed out on the final 11, having been part of the cycle as he's done here. So a huge amount of sympathy. But then actually you look at it and you think, well, he might still play a role. I'd be surprised if he's not the reserve batter. I mean, I'm sure that if he's fit and raring to go, that he will be called upon if there's an injury to an opening batter.
Depth. I mean, you look at the depth in the squad. I mean, England bat 1 to 11, so definitely one of the most dangerous teams. Second last question for you. Can you give me one player? I mean, we've talked about Ben Stokes, we've talked obvious names. Perhaps someone who may be flying under the radar, but you think could be that X factor in this England squad, given the conditions in India?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, because a lot of, when you look at the England squad, a lot of them are very familiar names, and we kind of know what we're going to get from them, and we kind of know where they're going to fit into their role and what they're going to bring to the side. The one that we probably don't know a huge amount, I mean, people obviously getting to know Harry Brook now and what he's capable of. Gus Atkinson, really interesting selection.
He's quick. He's
very quick, but his knowledge of Indian conditions will be zero. His knowledge of playing ODI cricket is very limited. I mean, he is literally the sort of, late call, bring in. And it goes a little bit back to my point about Mark Wood and Adil Rashid. What I think he will bring, he may not always bowl his 10 overs if he plays, but he is that point of difference. He is your genuinely quick bowler who can break a partnership in the middle overs. And I think when you've got, Mark Wood, for me, he starts, but I don't think he's going to play all the games. I mean, it's a big ask for Mark Wood to play all the games. So what you're looking for is someone who can do Mark Wood's role, to give him a break of 10 days, a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever it be between games. And can Gus Atkinson come in and do that role? He's going to get that chance. I can't imagine a scenario if things go to plan for England where Gus Atkinson doesn't have a role to play at some point in this group stages. So, yeah, I mean, he's a very sort of tall, aggressive fast bowler, but his character is very quiet. He's very quiet, very unassuming. He does all his work on the pitch. All his noise is created on the pitch. He can get in and above 90 miles an hour quite regularly. And I think if he's given the right conditions, some of the conditions will be different to others. That there will be some pace in some of the pitches. I'm sure geographically that will vary, and that's my point right at the start. That there will be, we generally think of subcontinent conditions back here in England, it's going to be spin, pace off, slow, low, but there will be, Mumbai can fly through if conditions are right. So it might be that you see the best of Gus Atkinson and what he can bring. But I think the challenge for Gus will be, how far down the line is he with cutters and the slower balls and working out when to do that kind of thing. It's very early days for Gus Atkinson. In one-day international cricket, you can imagine him in a tense situation if he's having to bowl to Kohli and Shubman Gill and Rohit Sharma et al. Trying to mix and match. Then that's going to be a huge challenge for him on where he is in his journey as an international cricketer. But his great strength is pace.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I saw him in one of the New Zealand games, and I was like, "Hello, what's going on here?" So great asset to have. Nick, final question. Where do you see England ending up? Can they go the distance?
Yeah. I mean, probably the easiest question you've asked, actually. I mean, absolutely. I don't think. I think India. Geez, I mean, I've been sitting here thinking like everyone. I think India probably favourites. Bearing in mind the conditions and their ability, obviously, to know conditions and the geographical nature of the tournament, understanding the conditions better naturally than some of the touring sides coming over. You look at Ahmedabad, England playing their first game there against New Zealand. They played a test match there, and that time when we were chatting before that series a couple of years ago, they were in the nets. And the pitch and the nets were flying through, and England played all their quicks and seamers, and actually the pitch looked the same, but India played all the spinners. That's the sort of challenge I think that England are going to have to get right. They're going to have to be very smart. They're going to have to be get the nuances of the game right. Inevitably, we look at the Butlers, the Stokes, as we've just done here when we preview. You look at the players, but actually. As much as that, Jamie, it's the captaincy. Jos Buttler as a captain, as a leader. Can he find the right moment to make the right call? Has he got? Yes, he has got a good feel for the game. Can he get that really good feel for the moment in a game that's going to change a game? Because all the analytics, Jamie, will be in his ear saying, this is the matchup. You need to bowl this bowler against this batter. That will be in his ear. But the great strength for me of Eoin Morgan is. When he was captain, is I know the analytics are telling me one thing, but my feel for this moment is to do that. Now, can Jos Buttler do that? Can Rohit Sharma do that? Can all the captains do that? And I think that is going to be so pivotal in the outcome of these matches that inevitably are going to be pretty tight and pretty much sort of key moments that are going to go one way and then push it back another. So, little nuances like that, we can't tell how he's going to do, Jos Buttler. We can't tell how all the captains are going to do. But for me, I see that as being a really crucial role in who's going to come out on top in this World Cup, as much as, who's got the best players, who's got the best balance of side. Of course, that's important. But there are the kind of key moments in games. And can England get that right? Of course they can. Of course they can. And they've got the personnel to be able to do it. But that's what I think will be the determining factor on who wins this World Cup and who doesn't.
Fantastic. Jos Buttler, despite being Jos Buttler, and all this success over here in India, with IPL franchises, sort of Jos Buttler, the captain to some regard, sort of does fly under the radar. So I agree with you. I mean, how he functions, as you said, when the stats guys are saying this and so saying that, it's like the devil on one shoulder
But
and the angel on the other.
yeah, I mean, just to finish off on that point, there is so much information now being gathered by these
Yeah.
players. But actually, for me, that I might have mentioned it earlier, but I think it's worth mentioning again because the difference between T20 cricket and 50 over cricket, and don't forget, when you're talking about England here, they haven't played a huge amount of ODI cricket in this cycle. I think the last cycle up to the 2019 World Cup, they played 20 different series in that build-up of that cycle. I think they played 13 or 14 this time. They haven't huge amount of ODI cricket. And what that does is, and we don't play a huge amount in England now with the 100 and the way things have been scheduled. So these guys aren't playing a huge amount. Now, when I look at the best players in the world, Virat Kohli, Babar Azam, with the bat, in those middle section, can they identify how to get through that 10 over section? When they've just lost a couple of wickets and they've got to rebuild, what tempo do they go at? All those sorts of little nuances of games. So the best players who have played a lot of 50 over cricket, your Kohlis, your Babas, these kind of guys, they can call on a lot of experience, a lot of nous, a lot of understanding, very clever, very smart. They are very likely to be able to sort of navigate themselves and their team through that difficult situation. Can an England side who have not played as much ODI cricket of late do that? Of course they can. Absolutely they can. But that will also be their challenge. T20 cricket, it's a little bit one-paced. We know what you have to do. The game is very quickly getting to the 20th over, and the game you play at a very similar tempo. In ODI cricket, that tempo goes up and down and changes. And I think that will be the challenge for an England side that haven't played a huge amount of ODI cricket in the last few years, to identify those moments and get them right.
There you have it, Nick Knight assessing it, I believe, very, very accurately, which I expect from someone of your experience. It's been an absolute pleasure, Nick, picking your brains on how England could foreseeably end up at the World Cup. Thank you so much once again for your time.